Marriage is an amazing and contradictory phenomenon. You enter into it full of dreams, sure that you have found your eternity. At first everything seems perfect. The honeymoon fills life with bright colors, and even the most ordinary things turn into little adventures because you do them together. That's how my story with Lisa began. 7 years ago when we got married, I was sure I had drawn the lucky ticket. She was smart, witty, and had a casual charm that could draw all eyes to her in any company. But over time, something had changed. Or maybe she had changed. Looking back now, I realized that even then I could see the warning signs. They weren't glaring, more like small changes that are hard to notice unless you look closely. A late homecoming here, a canceled dinner there. She attributed it to stress at work or the need to be alone. I believed her because isn't that what trust is all about? Trusting the words of someone you love when they explain something. Only I didn't know that trust could become a weapon. Last New Year's Eve was supposed to be a quiet family night, as it always was. Usually we stayed home, watched the Times Square broadcast, and raised our champagne glasses, celebrating the coming of midnight. But this time Lisa had other plans. She said she was going to a party at her coworker's house. Allegedly it was work-related. However, the glint in her eyes when she mentioned it made me tense up. I didn't want to look like a jealous husband, so I feigned indifference. "Okay, have fun," I replied. "I'll stay home and watch soccer," I added with a strained smile, but something inside was bothering me. She left around 8 in the evening. She was wearing a sparkly dress that hugged her figure in a way I hadn't seen in years. Lisa looked amazing, but this was not how she dressed up for me anymore. "Don't wait up for me," she said, throwing me a playful smile before leaving. Her words hurt me more than I wanted to admit. I tried to distract myself. The soccer game was going on in the background, but my thoughts kept me busy. Who was she with? Was she really at the party? Fireworks popped in the distance, heralding the coming of the new year. Happy New Year, I thought bitterly, sitting alone in our empty living room. At almost 4 in the morning, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Lisa walked in, swaying slightly, exuding the pungent odor of alcohol. Dangling in her hand were her removed heels, which seemed to be weighing her down after a long night. I sat on the couch, pretending to be engrossed in my phone, though inside I was shaking with tension. My heart was racing and I tried my best to look nonchalant. She walked past me as if she hadn't noticed me, and headed to the kitchen for a glass of water. Her movements were awkward, but filled with some strange confidence. When she turned toward the hallway, I saw it in the dim light, a reddish mark on her neck. It was a mark that couldn't be confused with anything else. It was too visible, too telling. My stomach clenched, and it was as if the room had lost its air. I froze, trying to figure out if I was really seeing what I was seeing. A desperate hope flashed inside me. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I was imagining it? But the longer I stared, the clearer I realized that this trail was not mine. Rough night? My words came out unexpectedly loud, cutting through the silence like a knife. Lisa froze, turning to me. Her eyes widened as if she'd been caught off guard. A silly, clumsy attempt to look casual failed. "Are you still awake?" she muttered, her voice trembling, but she tried to speak calmly. She took a step in my direction, but I held up a hand, stopping her. "What's that around your neck?" I asked in an even, almost impassive voice, though everything inside was burning. Her hand instinctively went up to her neck, covering the mark. She avoided my gaze, her eyes darting from side to side. "Oh, that," she let out a nervous chuckle that only increased my irritation. "One of the girls at the party was too drunk and got loose. You know how it is at events like that." Her lie was so clumsy that it sent a surge of rage through me. I wanted to scream the truth out of her, to force her to confess, but something inside me snapped. I realized that her words no longer meant anything to me. Silently, I rose from the couch and walked past her, heading for the bedroom. Her scent, a mixture of perfume and alcohol, hung in the air as a reminder of what had happened. Lying in bed that night, I realized, this isn't a marriage anymore. It was a game, a farce in which I was no longer going to participate. When the sun came up, I had a plan. Over the next few days, I couldn't get that night out of my mind. Her wobbly gait, the strained lie, the mark on her neck, it all played over and over in my mind, leaving a painful mark like a scorched scar. The next day, Lisa acted as if nothing had happened. She chirped about her new goals for the year, humming along to the music while making breakfast like a dutiful, caring wife. I played along. I smiled when I needed to, nodded at appropriate moments. Outwardly I was calm, but inside, a cold resolve swept over me. This marriage I'd fought for so many years was dead. All that was left was to consummate it the right way. I knew I couldn't leave in haste. I had to plan everything so she would be left to brew in the chaos she had created. Monday morning when Lisa left for work, I sprang into action. I pulled out a notebook and started making a list of things that needed to be done. Paperwork, bills, clothes, a new place to live. All of this required careful preparation. I knew our finances well. Most of the major assets, like the house and cars, were in my name or jointly deeded. This gave me an advantage. I was confident that by the time I left, everything she had access to would be gone. That was my first step to freedom. The first thing I did was open a new bank account registered in my name only. After transferring the bulk of our joint funds into it, I left just enough in the old account so that Lisa wouldn't notice the change right away. Then I blocked our credit cards, citing suspicious activity. The thought of her facing rejection when she tried to pay for the purchase brought a fleeting chuckle to my face. After that, I busied myself with personal documents. Birth certificate, passport, social security card, all of these things I piled into a briefcase and hid securely. I didn't want Lisa to discover any of it when she realized I was gone. To store the rest of my belongings, I rented a storage unit on the other side of town, paying for it 6 months in advance. For a few days while Lisa was at work or out partying with friends, I would discreetly move my stuff there. I intentionally took a few unnecessary items, old boxes, broken lamps, and children's toys, to make it seem like I wasn't taking anything important. When it was all done, half of my life was safely tucked away in a small room, waiting for the moment I decided to give it back. Lisa didn't even seem to be aware of what was happening. She was too busy doing her own thing, texting with friends, staying late at work, or endlessly scrolling through her Instagram feed. But I noticed everything. I watched her avoid my gaze when she thought I wasn't looking. I watched her suddenly increased activity on her phone at night and how long she looked in the mirror before leaving the house. I guessed what was going on, even if she didn't have the courage to admit it. One evening, while Lisa was showering, I noticed her phone on the counter. She had carelessly left it without a passcode, and I took a moment to unlock it. My heart beat faster as I started reading her messages. There I found exactly what I feared most. A flirty correspondence with a coworker named Matt, full of winks, emoticons, and personal jokes that made my stomach clench painfully. That mark on her neck was no accident. It turned out to be proof that she'd lied right to my face. I now had proof of her cheating. But just walking away wasn't enough. I didn't want her to be able to escape the consequences of her actions. It was then that a plan for revenge began to form in my head. The first step was to gather more evidence. I took screenshots of her correspondence with Matt and sent them to my email. Then I checked her social media for hints of her double life. I found a few photos, suspiciously cropped, and location tags that clearly contradicted her words. I saved every detail. Dates, times, even moments where she referred to me in messages in a derogatory tone, calling me a fool who was interfering with her life. I wrote an email to her close friends, family, and a few mutual acquaintances who had always enthusiastically stood up for her. The email detailed her deceptions, accompanied by screenshots and facts. I wasn't going to send it yet, but the thought that it was ready gave me a strange satisfaction. In the next step, I found a temporary apartment on the other side of town. It was a modest studio apartment, perfect for a new beginning. I put down a cash deposit, signed the lease, and stashed the keys in my car. The last step was the departure itself. I didn't want a scene, didn't want to hear her excuses or attempts to hold me back. It had to end quietly. One chilly Saturday morning, I put the last of my belongings in the trunk of my car. The house was quiet. Lisa was still asleep upstairs, unaware that her life was about to change. On the kitchen table, I left a note with a terse message. Lisa, you know what you've done. Don't try to contact me. It's over. I quietly walked out of the house, leaving behind everything we had once built together. As I drove away, feelings came over me, mixing into a strange cocktail of anger, bitterness, and relief. But most of all, I felt freedom. This was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning. Leaving the house that had been a part of my life for years seemed strange and almost unreal. It wasn't just leaving physical space, I was leaving behind the life we'd built together. The morning light illuminated the streets, and the neighborhood looked peaceful. Neat white picket fences, holiday decorations on yards, quiet streets. But to me, it all became decoration, hiding the chaos and pain that was now part of my inner world. I didn't turn around when I left. I couldn't afford to. One look back would have been enough to make me doubt, and doubt was what I most wanted to avoid. My plan had already begun to take shape, and there was no backing out. The first stop was a rented storage unit. I unloaded the last of my belongings there. 2 suitcases, a travel bag, and a small box of personal items that held memories of life before Lisa. These items were my reminders of who I was and who I was about to become again. As I closed the warehouse door and put the key in my pocket, I felt clarity overwhelm me. This was the real breakup I had been waiting for. I then headed to my new apartment. A simple, modest studio apartment on the outskirts of the city. Its beige walls, old carpet, and the slight smell of fresh paint weren't impressive, but it was mine. It was a symbol of taking back control of my life, something I'd been deprived of in the last few years of my marriage. I took my things inside and paused in the empty living room, circling it with my gaze. This was where my new life began, my new beginning. By mid-afternoon, I was ready to cut my remaining ties. I turned off the old phone and changed the SIM card, taking a new number. The old one was left for Lisa in case she decided to text or call. I knew I would never read those messages again. I also logged out of all joint accounts, Netflix, the shopping app, and other services. I changed all my passwords, permanently shutting down access. Each step brought a strange sense of satisfaction, like I was erasing her influence on my life. The final step was the bank. I logged into our joint account and transferred the last of the money into my personal account, leaving just enough for her to pay the month's bills. It was enough to keep her from panicking right away, but not enough to avoid the consequences. After that, I disabled access to the account. When she opens it, there will be an empty balance and she'll know it's over. That night I sat on the mattress in my new apartment. For the first time since leaving, I allowed myself to think about Lisa. Not about the betrayal, not about her lies, but about who she used to be. The woman I'd once loved wasn't the same woman who'd come home drunk with a tag around her neck. That Lisa had disappeared long ago, giving way to someone I hardly knew. I thought about confronting her face to face, demanding an explanation or screaming until I felt relief. But I knew that wouldn't change anything. Whatever her reasons were, boredom, resentment, or selfishness, they no longer mattered. What mattered was that I had regained control of my life. The next morning I checked my email. My inbox was filled with automatic unsubscribe notices and bank notices. Among them was an email from Lisa's mother. Her message was terse. Heard what happened. Call me when you're ready to talk. We're worried about you. I read it and deleted it. Lisa's parents had always treated me well, but I knew I needed to distance myself now, not just from her, but from them, from everything that connected me to that life. At the end of the day, I imagined Lisa waking up in an empty house, alone with the reality she had created herself. Waking up alone, Lisa probably first felt a dull ache in her head, the inevitable hangover from the previous night. A confused mind, heavy thoughts. But then her gaze fell on the note left on the kitchen table. She read it over and over. 1, 2, 3. Maybe at first she thought it was some kind of stupid joke. Maybe even laughed, figuring I'd be back as soon as I cooled off. But with each passing hour as the day moved on, reality slowly began to break through her defense mechanisms. She walked through the house and began to notice. My side of the closet was empty. In the bathroom, my toiletries were gone. The bookshelves had gaping gaps and my car was no longer parked in the driveway. She tried to call me. Her calls didn't come through and her phone was silent. Silence became an answer she couldn't ignore. The thought gave me a sense of grim satisfaction. She was now feeling the emptiness I had left behind, and perhaps for the first time in her life she was realizing what it meant to be truly alone. Toward evening, I decided to allow myself the small luxury of ordering a burger and a cold beer at a diner nearby. It was a minor detail, but it felt like a small victory to me. Sitting at the window of my new apartment, I looked out at the quiet street below. There was a strange but pleasant sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in years. Yes, Lisa's betrayal had left a mark on me, but it had also opened the door to something new. It made me realize the truth about our marriage and about myself. With each sip of beer, I felt more and more that I was no longer a person who let others wipe their feet on me. I was someone who would recover no matter how hard it took. As I finished my beer, I pondered the next steps. My plan wasn't finalized yet. The consequences for Lisa were just beginning, and I knew tomorrow would be a new twist in the story. But this evening I was content to just breathe. The next morning I felt a strange mix of emotions. Somewhere out there in the house that was now a stranger to her, Lisa was probably just beginning to grasp the harsh new reality. Maybe she thought her lies and that mark on her neck would go unnoticed. Maybe she was counting on me to quietly simmer with anger and then come back. But this was not a situation she could solve with her charm. She had no idea that behind the scenes I was managing the threads that had begun to unravel her own world. That morning, I logged into a dummy email account created specifically for one purpose. It was time to send the email I'd been composing for the past few days. The title of the email was succinct: The Truth About Lisa. I attached screenshots of her correspondence with Matt. There was their flirting, jokes about me, and especially that message where she admitted she'd been dating him for months. The recipients were her close friends, her parents, and a few mutual acquaintances. That was enough for the information to spread quickly. The tone of the letter was calm, measured, unemotional. It wasn't about revenge, it was about facts. I added a short line at the end. Lisa doesn't deserve your sympathy. She deserves responsibility. As I closed the laptop, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. Everything was out of my hands now. The truth had to do its work. Meanwhile, Lisa was beginning to feel the effects of my disappearance. She had called me several times since morning, but each call went straight to voicemail. I imagined her sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at her phone, going through the whole gamut of emotions: confusion, frustration, and then panic. Her next attempt, as I expected, was to contact my family. This was predictable. My sister soon sent me a text message. "Lisa is looking for you. Wants to talk." I didn't respond. Lisa would find no allies there. My family had always seen her true face behind the charming mask, but kept quiet for my sake. Now they had no reason to remain diplomatic. By noon, the repercussions began to spread beyond our little world. Lisa's friends started asking her questions, and her attempts to defend herself looked pathetic. One of her friends, Megan, forwarded me Lisa's response to my email. It was an immature attempt to justify herself. "This is ridiculous. Matt and I are only friends. These messages are taken out of context. Someone is intentionally trying to ruin my life." After reading this, I couldn't hold back a sarcastic laugh. Lisa tried to spin her way out of it, but the facts spoke for themselves. The screenshots needed no explanation, and neither did that mark on her neck. With each passing day, the signs of her crumbling life became more obvious. Her social media pages, once radiating the perfect picture, a happy marriage, a successful career, a busy social life, suddenly went silent. The lack of new postings raised questions from those who knew her. Megan told me that Lisa stopped showing up to their weekly Pilates classes. What's more, she started calling in sick to work and taking sick days, something she had never done before. Her silence was deafening. The plan I had in mind was going exactly as I had hoped. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and all I had to do was watch from the sidelines. On the third day, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my own principles, I answered. "It's me," came Lisa's trembling voice. She sounded unsure, as if she was searching for the right words. I was silent. "Please, let's talk," she begged. "I need to explain myself." The anger I had long held back flared up inside me, but I kept my tone calm. "Explain what, Lisa? The text, the lie, or the hickey?" There was silence on the other end of the wire. Then she spoke up. "It's not what you think." "Save your excuses," I interrupted. "You made your own bed. Now lie in it." After a long pause, her voice came again, this time with a noticeable tremor. "I know I messed up," she admitted. "But we can fix it. I'll do whatever it takes." Her fear-filled words only made me angrier. "Fix what, Lisa? The marriage you destroyed? The trust you destroyed? This isn't something you can just apologize for." "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. "It was a mistake." "Mistakes happen when you make choices," I replied coldly. "And now you're going to face their consequences." I cut the call before she could continue. This conversation was a mistake. Even so, it only strengthened my resolve. Lisa didn't regret her actions. She only regretted getting caught. The next phase of my plan had already begun. I contacted Matt's wife. Yes, he was married too. I told her everything I'd learned. She had as much right to know the truth as I did. Her reaction was immediate and fierce. She vowed that she would hold Matt accountable for his actions. Knowing that Lisa would now face difficulties at work as well was like the cherry on the cake. She and Matt worked in the same department, and their affair had already caused whispers and bewilderment among co-workers. Now that the evidence had surfaced, it was only a matter of time before HR intervened. Her once flawless and enviable life was unraveling, thread by thread. By the end of the week, I didn't feel an ounce of regret. Everything was going just as I had planned. Lisa's reputation had been destroyed, her friends were beginning to turn away, and her career was in jeopardy. The consequences of her actions were as much personal as professional. Lisa had built her life on deception, and now that foundation was crumbling beneath her feet. It was only fair. She had betrayed me, and now she was paying the price. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over the situation. However, the final chapter lay ahead, and I knew it would be the most significant one of all. Days turned to weeks, and Lisa's life continued to fall apart. My emails did their job. Friends who I thought would always be on her side began to distance themselves. General acquaintances reached out to me, expressing sympathy and sometimes anger for Lisa's deception of them with her carefully constructed image. The repercussions of her actions were felt not only socially, but also professionally. I learned from one of Lisa's former co-workers that her affair with Matt had become the subject of office gossip. Human Resources was notified of their relationship and they both found themselves under investigation. Matt's furious wife, armed with the evidence I had given her, took matters into her own hands. She contacted Lisa's employer and revealed the details of their affair. Lisa found herself on the verge of losing everything she once valued. One evening, I received a text message from Megan, Lisa's former friend. She wants to talk to you. Would you agree to meet? Staring at the message for a long time, I was torn between wanting to remain silent and wanting to see her one last time. I wanted to make it clear that the person she knew was gone, just as she had ruined me for who I was. 2 days later, I agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town. I arrived early, choosing a table in the corner from where I could watch the entrance. The room was quiet, with only a few customers sitting at their tables. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but it couldn't calm the anxiety that had settled inside me. When Lisa walked in, she looked completely different. Her hair was in a sloppy bun, her makeup was gone, and fatigue was evident in her every move. Her gaze darted around the room until it stopped on me. I saw a glimmer of relief mixed with despair in her eyes. She moved closer, carefully taking the seat across from me. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said, rubbing the edge of her sleeve. I didn't say anything, just watched her. "I know I hurt you," she began, her voice shaking. "But I need you to understand." "Stop," I interrupted her, not hiding my harshness. "I don't need your excuses. You cheated. You lied. You ruined everything we had." She tried to hold back tears, but her voice trembled. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "Mistakes happen when you make choices," I replied coldly. "Now you're facing the consequences." Lisa covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. When she finally pulled herself together, her voice came out with a new plea. "Is there even the slightest chance we can make this right?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of my decision. "No, Lisa. There's no turning back. You made your choice and I made mine." Her face contorted in pain, but she nodded as if she already knew my answer. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I hope you are," I said, standing up. "Because sorry is all you have left." I walked out of the coffee shop, feeling like I had finally closed that chapter of my life. Lisa was going to have to face the consequences of her decisions on her own, and I was moving forward, relieved of the weight of her betrayal. Walking out of that coffee shop, I realized that for years my world had revolved around Lisa. Her desires, her dreams, and the ideal I had believed our union to be. Now I was free to rebuild myself as an independent individual, not part of a couple. The path forward was unclear, but it belonged to me alone, and only I could decide how to walk it. In the weeks that followed, I focused on moving. My main goal was to set up a new apartment, a space that reflected solely me. It was a clean slate, an opportunity to create coziness free of the compromises that have always accompanied living together. I spent my weekends strolling through thrift stores, picking out furniture and little things for the interior. This process became a therapy of sorts for me, giving me back a sense of control and rebuilding my identity one piece at a time. I also began to reconnect with friends I had lost during my marriage. Many of them were supportive when I told them what had happened, though some admitted that they had long noticed signs of Lisa's resentment. These words hurt, but also reminded me how important it was to reconnect with those who had always been there for me but had been sidelined. Work became my refuge. I dove headfirst into projects, spending long hours solving new problems. It wasn't just an attempt to distract myself, but a way to prove to myself that I could still be successful and valuable. My efforts began to pay off. I received a promotion and the respect of my coworkers. It was nice to feel proud of my accomplishments again, a feeling I hadn't felt in my marriage in a long time. One evening, while sorting through boxes left over from the move, I came across a photograph taken on our honeymoon. In the photo, Lisa and I were standing on the beach, smiling, not yet realizing what lay ahead. I stared at the photo for a long time, pondering what had gone wrong. Was it my mistakes? Or had she changed in a way I could no longer understand? In the end, I decided to leave these questions unanswered. There was no point in analyzing the past when the future lay before me. Meanwhile, Lisa continued to struggle with the consequences of her actions. Mutual friends occasionally shared news about her with me, even though I didn't ask them to. I learned that she was fired after completing an investigation at work. The last I heard, she had gone back to live with her parents and was trying to get her life together. When I first heard about her difficulties, it gave me a fleeting sense of satisfaction. Over time, however, my anger subsided, giving way to indifference. Lisa was no longer my problem, and I realized that resentment would only keep me in the past. About 3 months after I left, I received a letter from Lisa. It was handwritten, the jagged lines giving away her tears. In the letter, she apologized not only for the affair, but for the years of lies and neglect that had brought us to this point. She wrote that she didn't expect forgiveness, but hoped I could find happiness. I didn't respond. Her apology was sincere, but it didn't change anything. I folded the letter and put it away in a drawer as a reminder of what I had been through and overcome. Time passed, the months turned to a year, and my life began to find a new rhythm. I started dating again, though I was cautious. Trust didn't come easy after everything that had happened, but I didn't want to let Lisa dictate my future. I soon met a woman named Emily. She had been through her own struggles, and our stories brought us closer together. Emily was different from Lisa. She didn't seek attention, didn't try to be the center of things. Her strength lay in her warmth and sincerity, something I didn't even realize I was missing. There were no games or ulterior motives with her. Just honesty and a deep connection. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. One evening, sitting with Emily on the couch laughing at a randomly chosen movie, she suddenly said, "You look lighter, like you've let go of something heavy." Her words made me think. I realized that she was right. I had let go of the anger, the betrayal, and the version of myself that was tied up in Lisa's mistakes. "I think you're right," I replied, hugging her. I finally did. Sitting next to her, I realized that the past no longer held me back. Lisa's betrayal had once completely consumed me, but now it was just a memory, a part of history that no longer defined my life. The past chapter was closed, and a new one, full of hope, was just beginning. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.